Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. Let's head to the phones. And joining us right now, GOP political strategist, it's Matt Mackowiak. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Good morning, Chad. I'm doing great. How about you?
Doing well. It's a lot of news. So it's pretty busy out there. Before we get to the national shutdown stuff, I want to get to a couple of statewide stories and have you kind of talk about that a little bit. First off, Beto O'Rourke, who's running against Ted Cruz, he's not getting an endorsement from a pretty big liberal organization, which is pretty surprising.
Yeah, this was a surprise. I don't follow, Democratic Union politics every minute of every day, but the AFLCIO, I guess, had a meeting over the weekend in Texas and chose not to endorse him for U.S. Senate, even though it's pretty clear he's going to be the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate against Cruz. Sounds like maybe they were just a little bit frustrated with him not really paying them attention, and then also I guess he voted to fast-track TPP to give the president fast-track authority at the end of the Obama administration. So it is surprising, though. It's interesting. I was thinking about, Chad, does that mean that Cruz could somehow try to work the AFL-CIO and try to get them to stay out of the race altogether? That's something that Trump, might be able to do given his appeal to union voters and union leaders. So that might be something to watch going forward. But to me, it was obviously a pretty interesting signal that maybe the O'Rourke campaign is not as politically astute as you might imagine they would be.
Maybe they're not firing on all cylinders as they want everyone to believe they are.
Right. Yeah, and that's the question. And of course, O'Rourke has done a good job of spending a year going to small towns and doing a lot of grassroots events, and he deserves credit for that. But that's not the way to win a state as large as Texas at the statewide level. I mean, he has to raise $20 million probably to have even a chance to make the race competitive. And I don't see a path for him to do that. He's in probably the 13th most competitive U.S. Senate race in 2018. You've got 10 states that Trump won with Democratic incumbents. States he won with 5 of those he won with 54% or more. Those 10 will be the most competitive, and then you add Arizona and Nevada to that. And so Texas is either 13th or 14th most competitive after that. And so I just don't think O'Rourke is going to be able to raise enough money to make the race competitive. And I think Cruz is in strong shape anyway. So we'll see how it goes. The national environment will contribute to what happens in that race. But so far, O'Rourke has done some things in an interesting way, but I don't think he's putting the kind of campaign together that's going to give him a chance.
What is the story coming out of Dallas where Dallas County Republicans are filing a lawsuit to try and kick 128 Democrats off the ballot? What's going on there?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I know this because I happen to be a county chair here in Austin in Travis County. The county chair has to sign basically the candidate forms that candidates file. Because technically the parties run the primaries. It's not run by the state. The primaries are run by the parties themselves. And so it sounds like the Dallas County Republicans looked into the forms and they found that the county chair on the Democratic side did not sign the forms, that she had someone sign them for her. I know that I signed all of my forms in Travis County, so I don't have any concern about that here locally. But what I can say is that it's a very interesting legal situation. I don't know whether the judge would truly kick all those candidates off the ballot, particularly this late. Now that we're in January, just 5 weeks or so before the primary, but it will be an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, very interesting. Let's take a look on the national level. Of course, we're now 3 days into the government shutdown. Reportedly, there's going to be this procedural vote at noon Eastern time to see if they can get to 60 votes to have a spending bill that would go through February 8th. What are you hearing about that, and what do you think the chances are that actually passes?
Yeah, so I was surprised it didn't get done last night. They moved the vote to noon today, noon Eastern in the Senate, to extend the government to February 8th. It sounds like they're a couple votes short based on what I've heard this morning. So it looks like maybe the shutdown will continue for another few days or something. They have to get 60 votes in the Senate, obviously, to end the filibuster. And so I think they were at 51. McConnell voted no for a procedural reason, but they ultimately were at 51 on Friday. And so the question is, are they at 55? Are they at 58? Are they at 59? Are they at 60? And if they're not, then maybe they need to make changes to win a couple more votes. So this will be a test vote at noon to see where they're at. If they're at 60, then they'll find probably a way to end this in the next 24 to 48 hours. If they're not at 60, this may take a few more days or even go on beyond that. And keep in mind, the State of the Union is January 30th. And I assure you, The White House does not want the government to be shut down the night he's giving the State of the Union. So there is that deadline hanging out there as well.
So if you're the Democrats, knowing that you have the State of the Union, the Republicans and the White House want the government to be reopened by then, do you hold out until you get what you want? And for the Republicans, do you kind of do the same thing where you stand your ground because it's what the White House wants and it's what the base, it's what the Republicans want as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question. The question is, these things generally get done when one side believes it's winning and one side believes it's losing. And right now, I think both sides think they're winning, or maybe better put, both sides think the other side is losing. And so now I think this whole thing hits a totally different level today because the federal government is generally not open on the weekends, but it is open on a Monday morning. And so you had something like 1 million federal workers not go to work today. Now I think like another 1 million did go to work because they were considered essential. But obviously this reaches a new phase today, and I think it gives Republicans more of an opportunity to make the case that this is really hurting people and it's hurting our ability to have the federal government function in key ways. Given now that this has entered into a business day. So my sense is that the damage the Democrats are doing to themselves has hit a different level starting today. And so that may also change the calculus that Democrats make. But look, I just think they can't give in unless they have something on DACA, and Republicans aren't going to give in until they reopen the government. And so I don't know how you bridge that. It sounds like the way that McConnell was proposing it was to say, listen, let's extend the government to February 8th. And then if the government shuts down on February 8th, we will immediately proceed to an immigration debate on the floor of the Senate. And that's part of how he won Jeff Flake's vote, the retiring Republican from Arizona. That's part of how he won that vote, was to guarantee that they would begin an immigration discussion on the Senate floor if the government shuts down on February 8th. So that's the way he's proposing, but it sounds like that may end up being a couple votes short. We'll know in a couple hours.
Who do you think at the end of the day voters will blame, and will it have any impact on 2018 and the midterms?
I don't think it's going to matter very much because I don't think the government's going to stay shut down that long, even if it ends up being 10 days or something. I mean, remember, the government was shut down 16 days in 2013, and most people don't remember that, and they don't, remember whose fault it was or what the details were.
Right.
So I think at the end of the day, people are going to care about what happens on DACA, what happens on border security. I mean, it's the ultimate agreement that's going to matter for the midterms, not the number of days or which individual senator or congressman they want to blame. Generally, as long as there's no crisis. I mean, this is one of the challenges. Like, what happens if North Korea fires a ballistic missile while the government shut down? Now, I think most of the defense and national security personnel are working, but obviously there has to be some effect on the government's ability to respond if 1 million people aren't at work. You just cannot possibly be doing everything you were doing when the government was open. So if there's a crisis, I think it hits a different level. Well, I hope obviously there is no crisis, but we never know when something is going to happen. Yeah,
absolutely. Matt, tell folks how they can sign up for your newsletter and your latest podcast as well.
Yeah, we do a morning newsletter on Texas politics called Must Read Texas. 3,000 Texans receive it. It goes to your inbox every morning. It has a great summary of all the news that you need to have. You can subscribe at mustreadtexas.com. My podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's with the Washington Times. I've had senators and congressmen and ambassadors and journalists and authors on there. You can check it out in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and on the web at maconpolitics.com.
All right, Matt Mackowiak, as always, appreciate your time. Have a good one. We'll visit next week.
Hey, thanks so much. Thanks a lot, Chad. Take care.
That's Matt Mackowiak.